Yeah, well, I want to emphasize that question from CNN. The question's never asked how much does it cost when they're in the Mediterranean or the Red Sea or the Indian Ocean or the Pacific. But now that they're in our hemisphere on a counter-cartel mission or ensuring that an indicted individual comes to justice, now you're asking the question of cost. It's a disingenuous question to begin with. You're trying to find any angle possible to undermine the success of one of the most historic military missions the world has ever seen. The level of sophistication that Senate just was briefed on and the House was briefed on, a classified level, is something only the United States of America can accomplish. The world is taking notice of that. Certainly Venezuela is taking notice of that. And it continues because two oil tankers, overnight, were seized by the United States of America, stateless or sanctioned, because the oil blockade, the quarantine of oil out of unsanctioned or stateless vessels continues. That leverage will continue as Secretary Rubio outlined. So our military is prepared to continue this. As he said, the president, when he speaks, he means it. He's not messing around. We are an administration of action to advance our interests, and that is on full display. We're happy to brief the House and the Senate. We have nothing to hide.
I just want to first off ask, what were your initial reactions when you hear the news that Maduro is gone?
Well, to be honest with you, it's one of incredible disbelief. And the reason is you've got to look at it like this. Hugo Chavez came to power in 1999 in a democratic election, which he won fair and square and by a landslide with a leftist populist message, which was the old elites are corrupt, which they were. You can't trust the politicians, which you couldn't. I'm the future. I'm going to redistribute wealth. And to a huge swathe of the population that were trapped in poverty, despite the fact that Venezuela should be one of the richest nations on earth, that was an incredibly appealing message. Fast forward to 2013, where the country had been driven into poverty, widespread corruption meant that the vast majority of the money from the petroleum got funneled into the pockets of Chavez and his cronies. And bear in mind that the Venezuelan economy was at that point 97% dependent on petroleum. So the reality is the rest of the economy was minimal in comparison. The vast majority of that money was going to Chavez and his cronies, and the people were left to starve. At that point, Chavez was dying of stomach cancer in 2013, and he appointed his successor, Nicolas Maduro, who you can see on the screen. Now, that was very surprising for Venezuelans at the time, because Nicolas Maduro wasn't the most talented of politicians. He wasn't the smartest, he wasn't the sharpest, he wasn't the most politically astute. But what Nicolas Maduro was at the time was he was a loyalist. He could be trusted to enact Chavez's instructions to the letter. And Maduro came to power in 2013. And at that point, there was a slight wave of optimism in Venezuela because they were thinking to themselves, things couldn't get worse. But unfortunately, they did. And as Maduro went on in his reign, so things got progressively worse and worse and worse for Venezuelan people. Now, some of you might be aware that it wasn't just Maduro that was taken by the US government. It was his wife. And his wife is a very interesting figure because his wife is the lady who many people in Venezuela credit with being the brains behind the operation. The Telegraph called her the Lady Macbeth of Venezuela. His wife was a politician before she married Nicolas Maduro. And there are You can see them online on Venezuelan TikTok. There are clips of Nicolas Maduro trying to do very, very, very basic mental mathematics in his speeches or in his direct addresses to the Venezuelan people and getting it wrong. Maduro has never been known for his intelligence, his competence, or his political ability. He was known as somebody who was a loyalist, and many people credit his wife as the real brains behind the operation. And in Venezuela, she is known as being even more extreme, even more authoritarian, and even more cruel than her husband. So I was talking to a friend of mine and he was saying, Francis, I never thought this day could happen, that Nicolas Maduro would be facing justice. But to Venezuelan people, it's almost, if not more sweet, that she is facing justice with him.
Yeah, you mentioned he's not a natural politician, and yet he can't do simple mathematics, breaks a lot of promises, and has people around him to tell him what to do. He sounds like a natural one to me. But where do we go? Where are we now? So Maduro's gone, Lady Macbeth is gone. Who is likely to be in charge? I know it's so hard to say when there's so many updates coming, but who's likely to be in charge, say, 6 months from now and then maybe 2 years from now?
Well, the simple answer, James, is that we simply don't know. Those are questions which cannot be answered. All we can deal with are the facts that we know as of this moment, which is Delcy Rodriguez is currently in power. She is liaising with Trump. Trump is effectively calling the shots. Venezuela has now become a de facto colony of the United States of America. That is what is happening. And Delcy Rodriguez is a very interesting character. Now, for those people who think she might be more moderate, this isn't a moderate in any shape or form. This was a woman who was sitting at Maduro's right hand whilst he was being the authoritarian, whilst he was committing atrocities, whilst he was throwing his political opponents in jail and torturing them. And she stood by. She's also the daughter of a very prominent, very famous left-wing terrorist. So this is a woman who has the spirit of communism coursing through her veins. This isn't a left of center or even a left-wing Democrat. This is a hardline communist authoritarian. And I was talking to one of my friends who was saying to me that the images that you might have seen across all over your social media of Venezuelans celebrating, of Venezuelans dancing, playing music, playing musical instruments. That came from the streets of Madrid, Miami, New York, wherever it may be. Those did not come from the streets of Venezuela. When Venezuelans awoke on that Saturday morning, the streets were deserted. The only people who were out were people who were in a medical emergency, or they had to go to work, or they needed to go to the supermarket or to buy gas. That was literally it. No other Venezuelans were out. And if you were out, you was instructed that you had to carry your papers or documentation with you. And woe betide if you didn't have it with you, because that could be an immediate prison sentence. So this idea that this is a new dawn for Venezuela, it might be, but for a lot of Venezuelans, it's almost business as usual. But with the caveat that what you're also dealing with is the potential for a power vacuum. And there is one thing more dangerous in society than an authoritarian government, and that's a power vacuum, because that's when society can crumble, civilizations collapse, it can descend into civil war. And what Delcy Rodriguez and the rest of her cronies are doing is going really hard line to ensure that that doesn't happen. There have even been reports of the colectivos, and the colectivos are essentially Maduro's henchmen, they're his thugs, who are going around door to door, knocking on doors and checking to see if anybody has been promoting or posting pro-Trump social media. Also bearing in mind that X is currently banned in Venezuela. So, like I said before, there is a ray of hope for Venezuelans and the country itself, but it is only a ray of hope. And Nothing is certain, nothing is written in stone, and these events can change day by day, hour to hour. And all Venezuelans can really do at this point is just sit tight and hope and pray that things stabilize and they can return to some kind of normalcy or normality.